Emma Caldwell stood on the porch of their isolated ranch house, her golden hair catching the last light of the setting Arizona sun. The year was 1870, and at 22, she had never known a life beyond this harsh, beautiful territory. The vast expanse of desert and mountain stretched before her, painted in shades of crimson and gold that would soon give way to the cold blue of night. Inside, she could hear the familiar sounds of her family preparing for another hunt. The metallic clicks of rifle chambers being loaded, the scrape of knives against whetstones, and the low, determined voices of men readying themselves for violence. "We'll head north toward the Superstition Mountains," her father, Robert Caldwell, announced as Emma stepped back inside. His weathered face was a map of the territory itself, every line etched by sun, wind, and the hardness of the life he'd chosen. Word came from Fort McDowell. They spotted him near Apache Junction 3 days ago. Emma's 3 brothers, James, Thomas, and William, nodded in unison. They were reflections of their father in different stages of becoming. James, the eldest at 30, already possessed the same granite-like features. Thomas, 26, had the coldness in his eyes. And William, just a year older than Emma, still retained a flicker of softness that the frontier had not yet extinguished. "Did they see the others with him?" James asked, checking the action on his Winchester. "No," her father replied. "Seems he's alone this time. Makes our job easier." Emma had heard the name spoken in hushed tones around their table for as long as she could remember. Kai, the Apache warrior that white settlers called Shadow of Death. To the Caldwells, he was the most lucrative bounty in the territory, worth more alive than dead, but worth plenty either way. "May I see it again?" Emma asked quietly. Her father reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a folded, weathered poster. The sketch on it depicted a severe-looking Apache man, his features sharp and unforgiving. The reward stood at $5,000, dead or alive. The crimes listed included raids on settlements, attacks on cavalry units, and the deaths of several prominent ranchers. To the U.S. Army and the territorial government, he was a murderer. To the Caldwells, he was their fortune waiting to be claimed. "Don't you worry none, Emma," Thomas said, mistaking her interest for concern. "This time we'll bring him back, and then we can finally move somewhere civilized. Maybe even San Francisco, like you've always talked about." Emma nodded, though her thoughts were more complex than her brother imagined. She'd grown up with stories of the Apache warrior, how he moved like a ghost through the desert, how he could survive wounds that would kill ordinary men, how he appeared and disappeared like the wind itself. In the secret corners of her mind, she constructed an image that was part monster, part myth. "I've packed your provisions," she said, changing the subject. "Should last you 5 days." "We won't need that long," her father said confidently. "Not this time." As they ate their final meal before departure, Emma listened to her family's plans. They spoke of Kai as if he were an animal to be tracked and captured, not a man. Yet something in her had always questioned this simplicity. The stories that circulated among the settlers didn't quite align with the actions attributed to him. Attacks on military targets? Yes. But the murdered families, the burned homesteads, those tales had always seemed inconsistent with the tactical precision of his other movements. "Emma," her father's voice cut through her thoughts, "while we're gone, Joshua Parker will ride by to check on you. His father owes me a favor." Emma nodded, though the thought of Joshua Parker's visits made her uneasy. The son of a wealthy cattle rancher, Joshua had made his intentions toward Emma clear, despite her polite rebuffs. Her father, seeing the advantages of such a match, had encouraged the courtship. "I'll be fine on my own," she said firmly. "I always am." "Nevertheless," her father insisted, "these are dangerous times." Later that night, after her family had ridden out under the cover of darkness, Emma stood alone on the porch again. The moon hung low over the mountains, casting long shadows across the scrubland. Something about tonight felt different, a tension in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. She couldn't have known then that within 24 hours, everything she believed about her family, about Kai, and about herself would be irrevocably changed. Nor could she have imagined that the man her family hunted would soon become her only hope for survival. As Emma turned to go back inside, a flicker of movement caught her eye at the edge of their property. Just a brief disturbance in the darkness, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. She paused, squinting into the night, then shook her head and closed the door behind her, sliding the heavy wooden bar into place. The desert night was full of shadows, and sometimes shadows watched back. The following evening arrived with an unnatural stillness. Emma had spent the day attending to her usual chores, feeding the chickens, mending clothes, and preserving the last of the summer vegetables from their small garden. As twilight approached, she found herself repeatedly glancing toward the horizon, an inexplicable sense of foreboding settling over her. She was preparing a simple supper when she heard it, hoofbeats approaching fast, too fast for a friendly visit. Setting down her knife, she moved quickly to the rifle mounted above the door, loaded it with practiced hands, and positioned herself at the window. 5 riders emerged from the gathering darkness, their horses kicking up dust as they thundered toward the house. They weren't her family, and they weren't wearing cavalry uniforms. The riders' sombreros and bandoliers identified them clearly enough. Mexican bandits, likely from across the border, looking for easy pickings at isolated homesteads. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady on the rifle. She'd been taught to shoot since childhood, not for hunting like her brothers, but for moments precisely like this one. When the riders were 50 yards out, she fired a warning shot into the air. The men pulled their horses up short, conferring briefly before one of them called out in heavily accented English, "Señorita, we mean no harm. We seek only water for our horses and perhaps a little food for ourselves. If we have money to pay." Emma knew better. "There's a creek 2 miles east," she shouted back, "and Fort McDowell is just a half-day's ride north. They'll provide what you need." The man who had spoken laughed, the sound carrying ominously through the dusk. "Come now, pretty one. Don't be unfriendly to travelers." "The next shot won't be a warning," Emma replied, her voice remarkably calm despite her racing pulse. "Leave now." Instead of retreating, the men spread out, circling the house at a distance. Emma realized with growing dread that they had likely been watching long enough to know she was alone. She counted the rounds in her rifle, 7, and the additional ammunition she could reach without leaving her position, 12 cartridges. Not enough if they decided to wait her out. The first shot came from behind the house, shattering a window in the back bedroom. Emma ducked instinctively as more shots followed, splintering wood and breaking glass. She returned fire when she spotted movement, but the encroaching darkness made it difficult to aim with precision. For nearly an hour the standoff continued. Emma managed to wound one of the attackers, but her situation grew increasingly desperate. They had worked their way closer to the house, using the outbuildings and water trough for cover. It was only a matter of time before they broke through. When the front door finally splintered under the force of a boot, Emma fired her last round at the intruder, catching him in the shoulder. He fell back with a curse, but 2 more rushed in behind him. Emma reached for her father's pistol on the mantel, but a rough hand caught her arm, spinning her around. "Such spirit," said the man who appeared to be the leader, his breath hot against her face. "The gringo women are always so fierce." Emma fought with every ounce of her strength, but she was quickly overpowered. As they bound her wrists with rough rope, she heard them discussing their plans, looting the house, taking the horses, and then taking her across the border where she would fetch a good price. "Please," she said, abandoning pride for survival, "take whatever you want and go. My family will return soon." The leader laughed. "Your family of bounty hunters. They are far north by now, chasing the Apache ghost. No one is coming for you, Golden One." A cold despair washed over Emma. He was right. Her family wouldn't return for days, and Joshua Parker wasn't due to check on her until tomorrow afternoon. By then, she would be long gone, vanished into the harsh borderlands where American law held no sway. As the bandits ransacked the house, Emma worked desperately at the ropes binding her wrists, feeling the rough fibers cut into her skin. Outside, the moon had risen, casting silver light through the broken windows. In its glow, she caught a glimpse of something, or someone, moving swiftly between the shadows of the outbuildings. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks, giving her false hope. But then came the sound, so soft it was barely perceptible, of a body falling outside. Then another. The bandits noticed too late. The leader had just returned to the main room, a sack of her mother's silver in his hand, when an arrow struck him directly in the chest. He stared down at it in disbelief before crumpling to the floor. The remaining men scrambled for their weapons, shouting in panic. One fired blindly into the darkness outside. Another ran for the door, only to fall with an arrow through his throat. In the chaos that followed, Emma worked her bonds free and crawled toward the fallen leader, pulling his pistol from its holster. The last bandit backed toward her, firing repeatedly at something or someone, moving with impossible speed around the perimeter of the house. When he turned and saw Emma with the gun, his eyes widened in surprise. She didn't hesitate. The shot echoed through the room, and he fell beside his companions. Silence descended, broken only by Emma's ragged breathing and the distant cry of a coyote. She kept the pistol raised, uncertain if her mysterious savior was friend or foe. Slowly, a figure appeared in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably Native American. As he stepped into the moonlight, Emma felt her breath catch. The sharp features, the proud bearing, the calculating eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She recognized him instantly from the weathered poster she had studied so many times. Kai, the most hunted Apache in the Arizona Territory, stood before her. The man her family had pursued for years, the shadow of death, and he had just saved her life. For what seemed an eternity, they regarded each other in silence. Emma still held the pistol, though it had lowered imperceptibly. Kai's dark eyes assessed her with an intensity that made her feel transparent, as though he could read every thought behind her blue eyes. He wore buckskin leggings and a cotton shirt that had once been white, but was now the color of the desert itself. His black hair was tied back, revealing a face marked not by the savagery she had been led to expect, but by a quiet dignity. Around his neck hung a simple leather cord with a single turquoise stone. "How you are hurt," he finally said, his English surprisingly clear though colored by the rhythms of his native tongue. Emma glanced down and noticed for the first time the blood seeping through her sleeve where a stray bullet had grazed her arm. "It's nothing," she replied automatically, then added with uncertainty, "Why did you help me?" Instead of answering, Kai moved toward the fallen bandit leader, retrieving his arrow with practiced efficiency. "More will come when these do not return," he said. "This place is not safe for you now." "I can't just leave," Emma protested, though she knew he was right. "My family—" "The bounty hunters," Kai interrupted, his expression unchanging. "They will not return for many days. By then it will be too late." A chill ran through Emma at his words. "How do you know who my family is?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I know those who hunt me." Before Emma could respond, Kai suddenly stiffened, his head turning toward the window like a wolf scenting danger. In one fluid motion, he moved to extinguish the single lamp still burning. "More come," he whispered. "Friends of these. They were not alone." Emma strained her ears and caught it, the distant thunder of hooves, at least as many riders as before, if not more. Her mind raced. If Kai was right, she couldn't stay, but where could she go? Fort McDowell was half a day's ride, and she couldn't be sure the soldiers there would believe her story over whatever tale the bandits might spin. They might even hand her back for the right price. "Come with me now or stay and face them," Kai said, his voice betraying no emotion. "Choose quickly." It was madness to consider trusting him, this man her family had described as a killer, this warrior with a price on his head that could buy a small fortune, and yet he had saved her when he could have simply watched the bandits take her. He had risked his freedom, perhaps his life. "My horse is in the stable," Emma said, making her decision. "I'll need supplies." Kai nodded once. "Take only what you can carry on your back. Be quick." Emma hurried to gather essentials: a canteen, jerky, a small bag of cornmeal, matches, a blanket, and her mother's old medical kit. She changed swiftly into riding clothes and sturdy boots, then wrapped a shawl around her shoulders against the desert night's chill. As an afterthought, she grabbed the folded bounty poster from where her father had left it and tucked it into her pocket. When she returned to the main room, Kai had already moved the bodies outside. There was no sign of the violence that had occurred, save for the broken furniture and her own blood on the floorboards. "They are closer," he said simply. In the stable, Emma saddled her mare, Willow, while Kai stood watch at the door. The horse sensed her anxiety and shifted nervously. "Easy, girl," Emma murmured, stroking the mare's neck. "We'll be all right." When they emerged from the stable, the distant riders were close enough that their torches could be seen, pinpricks of flame against the darkness. Kai led them away from the approaching bandits, keeping to the shadows of the mesquite trees that dotted the property. His own horse, a magnificent paint stallion, waited in a small arroyo beyond the boundary of her family's land. "Stay close," he instructed as they mounted. "Follow exactly where I lead. Make no sound." They set off at a careful pace, not galloping as Emma had expected, but moving deliberately, using the contours of the land to shield their escape. Kai rode with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of the territory, guiding them through narrow passes and dry creek beds that Emma, despite living here all her life, had never discovered. After an hour of riding, they paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. In the distance, Emma could see the flicker of torches as the second group of bandits reached her home. She watched in horror as flames soon engulfed the house where she had spent her entire life. Everything she had known was disappearing into the night, consumed by fire and smoke. "They will believe you died in the flames," Kai said quietly. "It is better this way." "Better?" Emma echoed, unable to tear her gaze from the distant inferno. "That was my home." "And now you are alive without it," he replied, his tone not unkind but practical. "Which would you prefer?" Before she could answer, he urged his horse forward, continuing their journey into the heart of the territory that white settlers feared to enter, the sacred mountains that the Apache called home. They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Emma's body ached from the tension and exertion, and the wound on her arm throbbed painfully. Still, she made no complaint, determined not to show weakness before this man who moved through the darkness with such ease. As dawn approached, they reached a series of rocky outcroppings high in the foothills. Kai dismounted, gesturing for Emma to do the same. He led them through a narrow passage that opened into a small hidden canyon. A stream trickled down one wall, feeding a modest pool before continuing its journey underground. "We will rest here," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the enclosed space. "It is safe." Emma slid from her saddle, her legs nearly buckling beneath her. She steadied herself against Willow's flank, unwilling to reveal how exhausted she truly was. As Kai tended to the horses, she took in their surroundings. The canyon walls rose high on all sides, providing natural protection. Near the pool there were signs of previous stays, a small fire pit, stacked firewood, and a lean-to shelter built against the rock face. "You've been here before," she observed. Kai nodded. "Many times. The army does not know of this place." As he gathered wood for a small fire, Emma found herself studying him openly for the first time. His movements were economical, each action serving a purpose. There was nothing of the savage about him, nothing of the monster her family had described. Instead, she saw a man of quiet competence, someone who had learned to survive in a world intent on destroying him. When the fire was lit, Kai approached her, gesturing to her injured arm. "Show me." Emma hesitated briefly before rolling up her sleeve. The wound had stopped bleeding but looked angry and raw in the growing light. Without a word, Kai retrieved a small pouch from his saddlebag and knelt beside her. He worked methodically, cleaning the wound with water from the stream, then applying a paste made from herbs she didn't recognize. His hands were gentle but sure, a healer's hands rather than a killer's. "The plant removes poison," he explained as he worked, "stops the blood sickness." "Thank you," Emma said softly. As he finished binding her arm with a strip of clean cloth, she gathered her courage and asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why are you helping me? You know who I am, who my family is." Kai sat back on his heels, regarding her thoughtfully. "You are not your father," he said simply, "or your brothers. You've been watching us," Emma realized. "For how long?" "Long enough to know you never joined the hunt. Long enough to see you look at the wanted poster and doubt the words written there." His gaze was unflinching. "Am I wrong?" Emma couldn't deny it. She had always questioned the stories, sensed inconsistencies in the accounts of Kai's alleged atrocities. "No," she admitted. "You're not wrong." He nodded, as if her answer confirmed something he had already known. "Rest now. When the sun is higher, we will continue." As Kai moved away to check their surroundings, Emma settled against her saddle, pulling her blanket around her shoulders. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her. The events of the night played in her mind like scenes from a fever dream. The attack, the killing, her escape with the very man her family had sworn to capture or kill. "You should not have been alone," Kai said unexpectedly, returning to sit across the fire from her. Your father was foolish to leave you. He thought Joshua Parker would protect me, Emma replied, a hint of bitterness in her voice. The cattle rancher's son. Kai's expression darkened. I know of him. Something in his tone made Emma curious. What do you know? He trades with the Mexicans who took your home, Kai said, poking at the fire with a stick. Stolen cattle for stolen Apache children. The accusation struck Emma like a physical blow. That can't be true. Joshua is... She stopped, realizing she had no idea what kind of man Joshua truly was. She had always felt uneasy in his presence, but had attributed it to his unwanted attentions, not to any deeper moral failing. Your father does not know, Kai continued, or perhaps does not care to know. Many white men see only what serves them. They fell into silence as the sun rose fully, casting golden light into their hidden canyon. Emma's thoughts churned with this new information. If what Kai said about Joshua was true, what else had her family been blind to? What other truths had been obscured by prejudice and the promise of bounty money? As if reading her thoughts, Kai spoke again. You wonder if I am the man on the paper your father carries. Emma pulled the wanted poster from her pocket, unfolding it carefully. The crude sketch captured Kai's features in the broadest sense, but missed entirely the intelligence in his eyes, the quiet strength in his bearing. These crimes, she said, running her finger over the list. Did you commit them? Kai was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant canyon wall. Some, he finally admitted. Not all. Not in the way they say. Tell me, Emma said, and was surprised by the gentleness in her own voice. And so, as the morning deepened around them, Kai told her his story. How his village had been attacked not by renegade Apache as reported, but by mercenaries hired to clear valuable mining land. How his wife and young son had been killed while he was away hunting. How he had tracked the men responsible and exacted justice that the territorial courts would never have granted an Apache. After that, he said, his voice devoid of emotion though Emma could sense the pain beneath, they needed a monster to blame. I became that monster. And the other raids? Emma asked. The attacks on settlements? I take only from those who profit from suffering, Kai replied. Military supplies meant for campaigns against my people, weapons being transported to men like Joshua Parker. His eyes met hers directly. I have never harmed women or children, never burned homes with families inside. These are lies told to make the hunt easier. Emma believed him. Perhaps it was foolish. Perhaps it was simply that she needed something to believe in after her world had collapsed. But she found truth in his words that had been absent in all the stories she had grown up hearing. My family will not stop hunting you, she said, the realization settling over her with a weight she hadn't expected. No, Kai agreed. They will not. The implications hung between them, unspoken but understood. Emma's position was impossible. She couldn't return home, not only because it was now ashes, but because doing so would mean betraying the man who had saved her life. Yet staying with Kai meant abandoning everything and everyone she had ever known. What will you do with me? She finally asked. Kai's expression softened almost imperceptibly. When it is safe, I will take you to a place where you can choose your path. Perhaps Fort Whipple, where there are good people who will help you reach relatives in the East if that is what you wish. And if that isn't what I wish? The question escaped before Emma could consider its meaning. Kai studied her, something unreadable passing through his eyes. Then you will choose another path, he said simply. But first, we must survive. As if to punctuate his words, a distant sound reached them. Horses approaching. Kai was on his feet instantly, extinguishing their small fire with sand. How did they find us? Emma whispered, her heart racing anew. Not the Mexicans, Kai said, gathering their few belongings with swift efficiency. Bounty hunters. Different from your family, more dangerous. How do you know? I know the sound of men who hunt for money alone, he replied grimly. They follow signs your family would miss. We must leave now. As they prepared the horses, Emma realized that in the space of a day everything had changed. The hunters were now pursuing both of them, and for the first time in her life, Emma Caldwell found herself on the wrong side of the law she had been raised to respect, running not towards safety but away from it, alongside the most wanted man in the Arizona territory. 3 days passed in a blur of constant movement. Kai led them deeper into Apache territory, using routes that seemed to materialize before them, and disappear once they'd passed. They traveled mainly at night, resting during the hottest hours in hidden caves or dense stands of juniper. Emma learned to move quietly, to leave minimal signs of their passage, to listen to the desert in ways she never had before. The bounty hunters remained frustratingly persistent. Twice they had come close enough that Emma and Kai had been forced to abandon their camp in haste, leaving behind precious supplies. Though Kai never showed any sign of worry, Emma sensed his growing concern. Their pursuers were skilled trackers, likely men who had hunted Apache for years, and they showed no signs of giving up the chase. On the afternoon of the fourth day, they reached a high mesa overlooking a vast expanse of canyon lands. The view stole Emma's breath. Endless stretches of red rock carved into impossible formations by wind and water, dotted with the green of hardy pine and juniper. It was beautiful and terrifying in its vastness. "We cannot outrun them forever," Kai said, breaking the silence as they gazed out over the landscape. "Sooner or later they will corner us." Emma had come to the same conclusion. Their horses were tiring, their supplies dwindling. "What do we do?" "We change the hunt," Kai replied, a glint of determination in his eyes. "No longer will we be the deer fleeing the wolf. Now we become the cougar, choosing the ground where we face our enemy." The strategy Kai outlined was as simple as it was dangerous. They would make their way to a canyon he knew well, one with a narrow entrance that would force their pursuers to approach in single file, and multiple escape routes known only to the Apache. There they would end the chase one way or another. "It is a half-day's ride," Kai explained. "We will reach it by nightfall." As they prepared to depart, Emma noticed Kai wince slightly as he adjusted his saddle. She had been so focused on their survival that she hadn't realized he was injured. "You're hurt," she said, moving to his side. Kai straightened, his expression revealing nothing. "It is nothing. Show me," Emma insisted, surprising herself with her commanding tone. After a moment's hesitation, Kai lifted his shirt to reveal a deep gash along his ribs, crudely bandaged with a strip of cloth that was now stained dark with blood. "When did this happen?" Emma asked, already reaching for her mother's medical kit. "2 nights ago, when we crossed the river." Emma remembered, a moment when Kai had disappeared beneath the rushing water, emerging moments later with a grim expression. She had assumed he'd simply lost his footing on the slippery rocks. Now she realized he must have struck a submerged boulder with considerable force. "Sit," she instructed, her tone brooking no argument. To her surprise, Kai complied, lowering himself onto a flat rock as Emma prepared to clean and dress the wound. As she worked, Emma was acutely aware of his eyes on her, watching her hands as they moved carefully over his skin. The wound was worse than she had initially thought, deep enough to require stitches under normal circumstances. She cleaned it thoroughly with water from their canteen, then applied a salve from her medical kit. "This will help prevent infection," she explained, more to fill the silence than because Kai needed the information. "You have a healer's touch," he observed quietly. Emma glanced up, momentarily caught off guard by the unexpected compliment. "My mother taught me, before she died." "The fever took her," Kai said, not a question but a statement. Emma nodded, surprised. 5 years ago. How did you know?" "I heard your father speak of it once when I was watching your family." A shadow crossed his face. "I lost my mother to the same sickness." The simple admission created a bridge between them, a shared grief that transcended the vast differences in their lives. Emma finished bandaging his wound in silence, a new understanding settling between them. When she had finished, Kai stood and tested the bandage, nodding his approval. "Thank you," he said, the words carrying more weight than their simplicity suggested. They continued their journey toward the canyon, traveling along ridge lines to avoid leaving tracks in the softer ground below. As they rode, Emma found herself watching Kai with new eyes. The past days had stripped away the monstrous image she had been raised with, revealing instead a man of principle and surprising depth. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried wisdom born of suffering and survival. By late afternoon, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, promising a rare summer storm. The air grew heavy with electricity, and distant thunder rolled across the canyons. Kai studied the approaching weather with concern. "The rain will cover our tracks," Emma observed, hoping to find a silver lining. "Yes," Kai agreed, "but it will also make the canyon dangerous. Flash floods come without warning. They pushed on, racing against both the storm and their pursuers. As the first heavy drops began to fall, the canyon came into view, a narrow slash in the red rock that opened into what Kai had described as a defensible position. "We must hurry," Kai urged, as lightning split the sky above them, followed almost instantly by a deafening crack of thunder. They entered the canyon just as the rain began in earnest, a sudden deluge that turned the dusty ground to slick mud beneath their horses' hooves. The walls rose sharply on either side, squeezing them along a path barely wide enough for two riders abreast. Emma fought to control Willow, who snorted nervously at each lightning flash. "Not much further," Kai called over the storm's roar. "Around this bend!" His words were cut short by a sharp crack that Emma immediately recognized as a rifle shot. A bullet struck the canyon wall inches from Kai's head, sending stone fragments flying. "Ride!" Kai shouted, urging his paint stallion forward as a second shot echoed through the canyon. Emma pressed her heels into Willow's sides, ducking low in the saddle as they galloped through the narrow passage. More shots followed, but the driving rain and gathering darkness made accurate aiming impossible. They rounded a sharp bend, and the canyon suddenly widened into a roughly circular space, perhaps 50 yards across. At the far end, Emma could see 3 possible exits, narrow fissures in the rock that led to unknown destinations. Kai leaped from his horse, pulling his rifle from its scabbard. "Take the horses to the center passage," he instructed, positioning himself behind a large boulder near the canyon entrance. "It leads upward to a place they cannot follow. Wait for me there." "I'm not leaving you," Emma protested, sliding from Willow's back. "This is not a debate," Kai said sharply. "Go now." "I can shoot," Emma insisted, drawing the pistol she had taken from the bandit leader. "My father made sure of that, at least." Kai's expression hardened, but before he could argue further, a voice called out from the canyon entrance. "Come out, Apache. We know you're in there, and we know you've got the Caldwell girl." Emma froze, recognizing the voice immediately. "That's Joshua Parker," she whispered. Something dangerous flickered in Kai's eyes. "So the cattle rancher's son joins the hunt himself." "We just want the girl back safe," Joshua continued, his voice carrying despite the storm. "Give her up and we might let you live long enough to see a proper hanging." Cruel laughter followed this declaration. At least 3 other men, Emma judged. Joshua hadn't come alone. "You were right about him," Emma said, a cold certainty settling in her chest. "He's not here to rescue me. He's here for you, for the bounty." "And for you," Kai added grimly. Men like Parker do not accept rejection easily. A plan began to form in Emma's mind. Dangerous, perhaps foolish, but with a chance of success where direct confrontation offered little hope. "I know how to end this," she said. Kai turned to her, skepticism evident in his expression. "Trust me," Emma urged, meeting his gaze steadily. "As I have trusted you." After a long moment, Kai nodded once. "What is your plan?" Emma quickly outlined her idea. It was risky, relying on Joshua's arrogance and the storm's continuing fury, but it might be their only chance to escape without bloodshed. Kai listened, his expression unreadable, then added his own modifications to strengthen their position. "It could work," he conceded, "but if it fails—" "It won't," Emma said with more confidence than she felt. "Joshua has always underestimated me. Let's make him pay for that mistake." As Kai moved to position himself according to their plan, he paused, his hand briefly touching Emma's shoulder. "Be careful," he said simply, the words carrying a weight that made Emma's heart beat faster. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from behind the boulder, moving into the rain-swept center of the canyon. "Joshua," she called, forcing a tremor into her voice. "Joshua, is that really you?" After a moment's silence, Joshua appeared at the canyon entrance, rifle raised. "Emma, are you hurt?" "Please help me," Emma cried, adding a convincing sob. "He's gone mad. The storm, he thinks it's a sign. He's performing some kind of ritual in one of the caves. I managed to get away while he was distracted. Please, hurry." Joshua lowered his rifle slightly, suspicion warring with desire on his face. "Which cave? Where is he?" "The one to the left," Emma said, pointing to the westernmost passage while subtly positioning herself between Joshua and the central exit where their horses waited. "Hurry, before he realizes I'm gone." Joshua turned to his companions, 3 rough-looking men whom Emma recognized as hired guns from the border towns. Simmons, Rodriguez, with me. Dawson, keep watch here and make sure no one gets past. As Joshua and 2 of the men advanced cautiously into the canyon, Emma retreated slowly, maintaining the appearance of a frightened victim while leading them exactly where she wanted them. Rain continued to pour, reducing visibility and muffling sounds, perfect conditions for their plan. "It's okay, Emma," Joshua called, his voice softening in what he clearly thought was a reassuring manner. "You're safe now. We've been looking everywhere for you since we found the ranch." "You came to the ranch?" Emma asked, injecting hope into her voice while continuing her careful retreat. "The morning after the attack," Joshua confirmed, advancing steadily. "We found the bodies, the fire. We thought you were dead until we picked up your trail heading into Apache territory." They were now fully inside the canyon, the entrance guarded only by the 4th man, Dawson. Emma could see Kai's dark silhouette moving silently along the canyon's edge, circling behind the bounty hunters, like the shadow he was named for. "How did you know to look for me with him?" Emma asked, buying more time as Kai closed in on the sentry. Joshua's expression hardened. "Your father sent word from up north, said the Apache might be heading back to his home territory and to keep watch for him. When we found signs of 2 riders leaving your ranch, it wasn't hard to figure out what happened." "And what do you think happened, Joshua?" Emma asked, allowing some of her real feelings to seep into her voice. Joshua mistook her tone for trauma. "He took you hostage, of course. Used you as a shield to escape. Don't worry, Emma, he'll pay for touching you." Behind Joshua, Kai had reached the sentry. There was a brief, silent struggle, and then the man slumped to the ground, unconscious but alive. Kai nodded once to Emma, the signal that their escape route was clear. "He didn't take me hostage, Joshua," Emma said, straightening her posture and dropping all pretense of fear. "He saved my life when your Mexican trading partners decided to claim me as merchandise." Joshua's expression froze, then twisted with anger. "What are you talking about?" "I know about your business dealings," Emma continued, backing steadily toward the center passage, "trading stolen cattle for stolen children, working with the same bandits who attacked my home." "You've lost your mind," Joshua snarled, raising his rifle again. "That savage has filled your head with lies." "The only liar here is you," Emma replied, her hand moving slowly toward the pistol concealed beneath her shawl. "Did you arrange the attack, Joshua? Was it your idea to burn the house down after they took me?" Joshua's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" He stopped abruptly, realization dawning. "This is a trap." At that moment, a low rumble began to echo through the canyon. Not thunder, but something more ominous. The bounty hunters turned in confusion as the sound grew louder. "Flash flood!" one of them shouted, pointing toward the canyon entrance where a wall of water had appeared, churning with debris and gathering speed as it rushed toward them. Emma seized the moment of chaos, drawing her pistol and firing a warning shot into the air. "The center passage leads to higher ground," she shouted over the roar of the approaching water. "Drop your weapons if you want to live." Joshua's companions needed no further encouragement. They threw down their rifles and ran for the passage Emma had indicated. Joshua himself hesitated, hatred burning in his eyes as he realized how completely he had been outmaneuvered. "This isn't over, Emma," he growled, finally dropping his rifle as the floodwaters reached his boots. "Yes, it is," she replied with a certainty that surprised even herself. As Joshua grudgingly followed his men toward safety, Kai appeared beside Emma, leading both their horses. "We must go now," he said urgently. "The eastern passage. It will take us above the flood." They mounted quickly, spurring their horses into the narrow fissure, just as the full force of the flood tore through the canyon behind them. The passage climbed steeply, barely wide enough for their horses to navigate single file. Water rushed at their heels, but the path rose faster than the flood could follow. After several tense minutes of climbing, they emerged onto a high ledge overlooking the flooded canyon. Below, they could see Joshua and his men clinging to rock outcroppings, stranded but alive. "They will be trapped until the waters recede," Kai observed. "A day, perhaps 2. Emma felt no sympathy for Joshua, but she was relieved that their escape had not required bloodshed. "Where do we go now?" she asked. Kai pointed to a distant ridge silhouetted against the stormy sky. "There is a place beyond those mountains, a hidden valley where some of my people have taken refuge. We will be safe there." As they rode away from the canyon, Following a trail invisible to any but the most knowledgeable, Emma felt something shift within her. The last ties to her old life had been severed. Joshua would spread his version of events, how the savage Apache had corrupted Emma Caldwell, turned her against her own kind. Her reputation would be destroyed. There could be no return to the world she had known. Strangely, the realization brought not despair, but a sense of liberation. The storm had passed, leaving the desert washed clean, the air scented with sage and rain-soaked earth. Ahead lay unknown territory, both literal and figurative, and beside her rode a man who had shown her more honor and truth in a few days than she had found in years among her so-called civilized neighbors. As if sensing her thoughts, Kai turned to her. "You could still go back," he said, his expression solemn. "When we reach the valley, I could lead you to a settlement. Your father would believe you were taken against your will." "Is that what you want?" Emma asked, studying his face in the fading light. "What I want," Kai began, then paused, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes before he mastered it. "What I want has not mattered for a very long time. It matters to me," Emma said softly. For a moment, Kai's carefully maintained reserve faltered. He reached across the space between their horses, his hand finding hers. The touch was brief but electric, conveying more than words could express. "Then let us see where this path leads," he said, his voice carrying a warmth Emma had not heard before. Together. As they continued their journey toward the distant mountains, Emma felt a curious peace settle over her. She had lost everything she had once believed defined her: her home, her family, her place in society. Yet somehow, riding beside this man, whom fate had cast first as enemy, then as savior, and now as something she dared not yet name, Emma Caldwell felt not loss, but possibility. Not an ending, but a beginning. The desert stretched before them, vast and unforgiving as always. But now, for the first time, Emma saw not its harshness, but its wild beauty, not its dangers, but its freedom. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. The hidden valley beyond the mountains was unlike anything Emma had imagined. Nestled between towering cliffs that shielded it from both the elements and unwanted eyes, it contained a small but thriving community of Apache who had refused relocation to the reservations. A clear stream meandered through stands of cottonwood and willow, feeding gardens of corn, beans, and squash. Simple dwellings, some traditional wickiups, others built in the style of Mexican adobe, dotted the landscape. Kai had warned Emma that their arrival might not be welcomed by all. She was, after all, the daughter of a man who had hunted their people for profit. But he had also assured her that among his people, each person was judged by their own actions, not those of their kin. The reception proved cautious but not hostile. Kai was clearly respected, if not revered, by the small band. His return brought visible relief to many faces, particularly that of an elderly woman, who Emma learned was Kai's grandmother, Nijoni. It was in her dwelling that Emma was given shelter, while Kai rejoined the warriors who protected the valley's perimeter. The first weeks were difficult. Emma struggled with the language barrier, with adapting to unfamiliar foods and customs, with the sidelong glances from those who remained suspicious of her presence. But gradually, as she showed willingness to learn, to work alongside the women in the gardens, to assist Nijoni with her weaving and cooking, attitudes began to soften. Nijoni proved an unexpected ally. Though her English was limited, she took it upon herself to teach Emma the Apache language, pointing to objects and speaking their names slowly, correcting Emma's pronunciation with patient persistence. In return, Emma shared her knowledge of medicine, combining her mother's remedies with the traditional healing practices Nijoni had practiced for decades. Kai remained something of a mystery. He came and went from the valley, often absent for days at a time, on what Emma understood to be scouting missions. When present, he kept a respectful distance, watching her integration into the community with evident approval, but seldom engaging directly. Whether this restraint stemmed from caution or some deeper hesitation, Emma could not be certain. One evening, nearly a month after their arrival, Emma sat with Nijoni outside her dwelling, grinding corn for the next day's bread. The setting sun cast the valley in golden light, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pinyon pine from the surrounding hills. "He watches you," Nijoni said abruptly, her weathered hands never pausing in their work. Emma looked up, startled by both the observation and the fact that Nijoni had chosen to speak in English. "Who?" The old woman smiled knowingly. "My grandson, Kai. He watches when he thinks you do not see." A flush crept up Emma's neck. "I'm sure he's just making sure I'm adapting well." Nijoni made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "No, he watches as a man watches a woman who has captured his heart." Emma's hands stilled on the grinding stone. "I don't think you saved each other," Nijoni interrupted gently. "This creates a bond. But there is more now, yes?" Before Emma could formulate a response, a commotion at the valley's entrance drew their attention. A small group of warriors had returned from patrol, one of them supported between two others, clearly injured. Behind them rode Kai, his expression grave. Emma was on her feet instantly, medical instincts taking over. She hurried to where the injured man was being lowered to the ground, already assessing the wound. A gunshot to the shoulder, bleeding heavily but not immediately life-threatening if properly treated. As she knelt beside the man, she was acutely aware of Kai approaching, his shadow falling across the wounded warrior. "What happened?" she asked, tearing strips from her petticoat to create a pressure bandage. "Cavalry patrol," Kai replied tersely. "They have established a new outpost 3 valleys over. Akule was shot when he went to investigate. The implications were clear. Their sanctuary was no longer as secure as it had been. The army was extending its reach deeper into Apache territory, squeezing the free bands into ever smaller areas." "I need my medical kit," Emma said, focusing on the immediate problem, "and clean water, hot if possible." As others hurried to fulfill her requests, Kai crouched beside her. "Can you help him?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "Yes, the bullet passed through cleanly. If we can prevent infection, he should recover fully." Something like relief flickered in Kai's eyes, followed by a warmth that made Emma's heart beat faster. "Thank you," he said quietly. For the next several hours, Emma worked to clean and treat Akule's wound, drawing on everything her mother had taught her and what she had learned from Nijoni. The bullet had indeed passed through the fleshy part of the shoulder, missing bone and major blood vessels, a fortunate outcome considering the circumstances. By midnight, Akule rested comfortably in his family's dwelling, the wound cleaned, treated with a poultice of herbs and carefully bandaged. Emma emerged exhausted but satisfied, wiping her bloodied hands on a damp cloth. Kai waited outside, a solitary figure silhouetted against the night sky. He turned as Emma approached, his face half illuminated by the moon's silver light. "He sleeps," Emma reported. "The fever risk is highest for the next 2 days, but if we keep the wound clean, I believe he will heal well." "You have a gift," Kai observed. "Your hands bring life where others would have seen only death." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "I only know what my mother taught me, and what I've learned here. Nothing special." "You underestimate yourself," Kai said, his voice low, "as you have since the night we met." They stood in silence for a moment. The night sounds of the valley, crickets, the distant call of an owl, the soft rustle of wind through cottonwood leaves, enveloping them in a private world. "Walk with me?" Kai finally asked, gesturing toward the stream that glimmered like liquid silver in the moonlight. Emma nodded, falling into step beside him as they followed the winding path that paralleled the water. Neither spoke until they reached a small clearing where a fallen log provided a natural seat overlooking a quiet pool. "The cavalry's presence changes things," Kai said as they sat, his gaze fixed on the water's surface. "The valley may not be safe much longer." "Where will your people go?" Emma asked, aware that the question implicitly included herself. "There are other places further south, even into Mexico perhaps, but each move takes us farther from our ancestral lands." A note of bitterness entered his voice. "Each year, there are fewer places where we can live as we choose." Emma had no words of comfort to offer, no reassurances that things would improve. She had seen enough in the past weeks to understand the inexorable nature of what was happening to the Apache and other tribes. The tide of settlement could not be turned back. "And you?" Kai asked, turning to face her fully. "What will you do?" The question caught Emma off guard. I hadn't thought beyond here," she admitted. "Beyond now." "You could still return to your people," Kai said, though something in his tone suggested he hoped she would not. "Your father and brothers must have returned from their hunt by now. They would welcome you back." Emma considered this possibility. Her family would indeed welcome her. After believing her dead, they would rejoice in her survival. But they would also expect her to resume her former life as if nothing had changed, as if she had not changed. "They aren't my people anymore," she said softly, the truth of the words settling deep within her. "I don't belong in that world now." "And do you belong here?" Kai asked, the question hanging between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Emma met his gaze directly. "I belong wherever I can live with truth, wherever I am free to be who I've become." Something shifted in Kai's expression, a softening, a surrender to something he had been fighting. Slowly, with a gentleness that belied his warrior's strength, he reached out to brush a strand of golden hair from her face. "From the first moment I saw you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "standing on your porch, looking out at the desert as if searching for something beyond the horizon, I knew you were different. Not like your father, not like any white woman I had known." "You've been watching me for that long?" Emma asked, remembering Nijoni's words. A ghost of a smile touched Kai's lips. "I told myself it was to understand my enemies better, to know the habits of those who hunted me." His hand lingered near her cheek, not quite touched. "But it was more than that. You saw beauty where others saw only harshness. You questioned what others accepted without thought." Emma's heart raced as she leaned slightly into his touch, closing the small distance between his hand and her skin. The contact was electric, sending warmth coursing through her despite the night's chill. "I never believed the stories they told about. Even before I knew you, something in me doubted." "And now," Kai asked, his dark eyes searching hers. "Now I know the man, not the myth," Emma replied simply. "And the man is someone I—" Her words were interrupted by urgent shouts from the direction of the valley's entrance. Kai was on his feet instantly, his body tensing as he listened to the calls echoing through the night. "Riders approaching," he translated grimly. "Many of them." They hurried back toward the center of the settlement, where the community was already mobilizing. Women gathered children, preparing to move them to hiding places in the cliffs. Warriors collected weapons, forming a defensive perimeter. "Could it be the cavalry?" Emma asked, struggling to keep pace with Kai's long strides. "No," Kai replied, his expression darkening. "The scouts report they carry torches, not lanterns. No uniforms." He glanced at her, hesitation evident in his face. "They say one of the riders has hair the color of yours." Emma felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "My father? My brothers?" "It seems so," Kai confirmed, stopping to face her directly. "They have found us, Emma." The implications crashed over her like a wave. Her family had somehow tracked them to the valley, perhaps following the same clues that had led the cavalry to establish their new outpost. They had come for her, and for Kai. "How many?" she asked, forcing her mind to focus on practical matters. "A dozen, perhaps more," Kai replied. "Too many for us to fight without casualties on both sides." Emma made her decision instantly. "I need to speak with them, before anyone gets hurt." Kai's expression hardened. "They have not come to talk, Emma. They have come to kill." "They've come for me," she insisted. "If they see I'm safe, that I'm here willingly." "Your father has hunted me for years," Kai reminded her. "He will not simply accept that his daughter has chosen to live among those he considers savages." The truth of his words stung, but Emma refused to accept that violence was inevitable. "Let me try, Kai, please. These are my kin. There has been enough bloodshed." For a long moment, Kai regarded her in silence, conflict evident in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. "I will go with you." "No," Emma said firmly. "If you appear with me, they'll shoot first and ask questions later. I need to speak to them alone." "It's too dangerous," Kai objected. "They won't harm me," Emma assured him, though she was less certain than she pretended. "They're my family." After another moment of tense silence, Kai reached a decision. "Halfway," he compromised. "I will take you halfway to the valley entrance. You will approach alone from there, but I will be watching. If there is any sign of danger—" "There won't be," Emma said, hoping her confidence wasn't misplaced. "But thank you." As the community continued its preparations for a possible attack, Kai and Emma slipped away, following a narrow trail that would intercept the approaching riders before they reached the valley proper. They moved quickly through the darkness, guided by Kai's intimate knowledge of the terrain. At a point where the trail widened into a small clearing, Kai stopped. "From here, you go alone," he said, his voice tight with concern. "Remember, they come as hunters, not as family. Be careful, Emma." Impulsively, Emma reached for him, her hand finding his face in the darkness. "I will return," she promised. "Whatever happens, I will come back to you." For one breathless moment, they stood together, in perfect understanding. Then Kai leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both gentle and fierce. A promise and a plea, wrapped in a single moment of connection. When they separated, no words were necessary. Emma squared her shoulders and continued down the trail alone, toward whatever reception awaited her. The torches appeared first, flickering points of light in the darkness, advancing steadily up the trail. Then came the sound of horses, the jingle of tack, the low murmur of men's voices. Finally, as Emma rounded a bend in the trail, she saw them. A dozen riders, rifles ready, faces set in grim determination. At their head rode three men she would have recognized anywhere, her father and brothers. "Father!" she called out, stepping into the open where the torchlight would illuminate her clearly. The effect was immediate. The entire group reined to an abrupt halt, exclamations of shock and disbelief rippling through their ranks. Her father's face, visible in the torchlight, transformed from hard determination to utter astonishment. "Emma!" he gasped, his voice cracking. "My God!" "Emma?" He practically fell from his saddle in his haste to reach her, crossing the distance between them in long, desperate strides. Before Emma could speak again, she found herself enveloped in an embrace so fierce it nearly crushed the breath from her lungs. "You're alive," Robert Caldwell repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "You're alive. We thought, when we found the ranch, the bodies." Over her father's shoulder, Emma saw her brothers approaching, their expressions mirroring their father's disbelief and joy. James reached them first, his hand tentatively touching her shoulder, as if to verify she was real. "How?" he asked simply. Emma gently extricated herself from her father's embrace, stepping back to face her family. "It's a long story," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But I'm safe. I have been safe all along." "Joshua Parker said you'd been taken by the Apache," Thomas cut in, his hand still resting on his holstered pistol. "Said you'd been brainwashed, turned against your own kind." Emma's expression hardened. "Joshua Parker is a liar and a criminal," she said flatly. "He trades with the same Mexican bandits who attacked our ranch. Who would have sold me across the border if—" "If what?" her father prompted, studying her face intently. The moment had come sooner than Emma had hoped. She took a deep breath. "If Kai hadn't saved me." The name fell like a stone into still water, sending ripples of tension through the group of men. Her father's expression shifted from joy to confusion, then to something darker. "Kai," he repeated, the name clearly bitter on his tongue. "The Apache we've hunted all these years. He saved you." It wasn't quite a question, but Emma answered it anyway. "Yes. He killed the bandits who attacked me, then got me to safety when more came. He protected me when Joshua and his men tried to capture us, and he brought me here among his people, where I've been living these past weeks." William, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "Emma, whatever he's told you—" "He told me the truth," Emma interrupted firmly. "About the attacks on his village, about his wife and son, about what really happened to make him the territory's most wanted man." She looked from face to face, meeting their gazes directly. "And I believe him." Her father's expression had hardened into something she recognized all too well, the implacable resolve that had made Robert Caldwell one of the most feared bounty hunters in the territory. "You've been through a terrible ordeal," he said, his tone gentler than his expression. "It's not uncommon for captives to develop confused loyalties, to sympathize with their captors." "I am not confused," Emma stated, drawing herself up to her full height. "And I was never a captive. I made my choice freely, and I stand by it." "Choice?" James echoed incredulously. "You chose to live among savages?" The slur sparked Emma's anger. "They are not savages," she shot back. "They are people trying to survive as their land is stolen, their way of life destroyed. They took me in when I had nowhere else to go. They taught me, protected me. They showed me more humanity than I've seen from many who call themselves civilized." A tense silence followed her outburst. The hired guns who accompanied her family shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. This was clearly not the reunion they had expected. "Come home with us, Emma," her father finally said, his voice softening with genuine plea. "Whatever has happened, whatever you believe now, you belong with your family. We can sort everything else out later." Emma's heart ached at the pain in his voice, but she remained resolute. "I can't do that, Father. Not if you intend to continue hunting Kai. Not if you refuse to see the truth." "The truth?" Robert Caldwell's voice rose in frustration. "The truth is that man has killed soldiers, settlers." "Soldiers who were attacking his people," Emma countered. "Settlers who had stolen Apache land. He fought back against those who had already committed violence. He never killed women or children, never burned homes with families inside. Those stories were lies, Father. Convenient lies to justify the bounty on his head." Her family stared at her, as if she had become a stranger before their eyes. Perhaps she had. The Emma they had known would never have questioned their version of events, never have defended a man they considered an enemy. "Where is he now?" her father asked, his hand moving subtly toward his rifle. Emma tensed. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm asking you, as your daughter, as your blood, to leave this place in peace, to let me make my own choice." "A choice to stay with him?" Thomas demanded, disbelief evident in his voice. "To turn your back on your family, your people?" "My choice to live where I can be true to what I believe," Emma replied steadily. "Where I don't have to pretend that injustice is justice, or that cruelty is necessary." A movement in the shadows behind her family caught Emma's attention, silent figures taking positions along the trail. Kai had not trusted her family to respect her wishes. The Apache warriors had encircled the clearing, prepared to defend their home if negotiations failed. Her father must have sensed the change as well. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the darkness surrounding them. "We're surrounded, aren't we?" "Yes," Emma admitted, "but no one needs to die tonight. Not if you're willing to listen, to understand." For a long, tense moment, the outcome hung in the balance. Emma could see her father calculating odds, considering options. The hired guns were growing visibly nervous, recognizing the precariousness of their position. Then, unexpectedly, it was William who broke the impasse. "Let me meet him," he said quietly. All eyes turned to her youngest brother in surprise. "What?" James demanded. "This man that Emma believes in so strongly," William clarified. "Let me meet him. Judge for myself." Emma studied her brother's face, searching for deception and finding none. So of all her family, William had always been the most thoughtful, the least bound by their father's rigid worldview. "Why?" their father asked suspiciously. William met Emma's gaze. "Because she's our sister, and she deserves to be heard." The simple statement, delivered with quiet conviction, shifted something in the clearing's atmosphere. A possibility opened where before there had seemed only inevitable conflict. Emma turned slightly, speaking in the Apache language she had been learning. "Kai," she called into the darkness. "Will you show yourself? My brother wishes to speak with you." For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows. Not Kai, but Nijoni, the elderly grandmother who had become Emma's teacher and friend. The old woman walked slowly but proudly into the clearing, her weathered face impassive as she regarded the armed men before her. She spoke in her native tongue, words Emma only partially understood, then switched to halting English. "My grandson asks if words will be spoken in peace, or if blood must be shed this night." Robert Caldwell stared at the elderly woman, clearly taken aback by her appearance and dignity. Whatever he had expected from savages, it had not been this. "Tell him," he began, then hesitated. "Tell him I will listen, for my daughter's sake." Nijoni nodded once, then spoke again in Apache. From another direction entirely, Kai emerged from the darkness. Emma heard the collective intake of breath from her family as they finally saw, in the flesh, the man they had hunted for so long. Kai walked with the fluid grace of a natural warrior, his expression calm but alert, his hands empty of weapons, though Emma knew he could defend himself in an instant if necessary. He came to stand beside Emma, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, yet not touching her, respecting the delicate balance of this unprecedented meeting. "I am Kai," he said simply, his English clear and unaccented. "You have come for your daughter. She is here by her own choice. Robert Caldwell's hand tightened on his rifle, but he made no move to raise it. "You took her from our home." "I saved her from men who would have sold her like cattle," Kai corrected evenly. "Men who burned your home to hide their crime." "The Mexican bandits," William interjected. "The ones Emma mentioned." Kai nodded. "The same men who trade with Joshua Parker, who provide him with Apache children taken in raids in exchange for American goods and protection." This revelation clearly shocked the Caldwells. James looked to Emma for confirmation, and she nodded grimly. "It's true," she said. "Joshua himself pursued us, not to rescue me, but to capture Kai for the bounty. He admitted as much." A heavy silence fell over the clearing as her family absorbed this information. Emma could see the conflict in her father's eyes, decades of prejudice and hatred battling with the evidence before him, and the testimony of the daughter he had thought lost. "Why should I believe you?" he finally asked Kai directly. "You should not," Kai replied calmly. "You should believe your daughter. Judge by what you see with your own eyes. Ask those who have traded with Parker if they have ever wondered where he gets his extra cattle or where the Apache children on the Mexican haciendas come from." William took a step forward, his gaze moving between Emma and Kai. "You truly saved her." "He did," Emma confirmed before Kai could answer. "And not just once. He has protected me, respected me, shown me a world I never knew existed." She took Kai's hand openly then, a declaration before her family of where her heart now resided. "He is a good man, William. Better than many who would call him savage." Her brother studied their joined hands, then looked up to meet Kai's steady gaze. Something passed between the two men, a recognition perhaps of a shared concern for Emma's well-being. "If what you say about Parker is true," William said slowly, "then much of what we believed was wrong." "Will," James protested, "you can't seriously be considering—" "I'm considering the possibility that we've been used," William cut him off sharply. "That the bounties we've collected, the men we've killed or captured, served someone else's purpose. That perhaps we've been on the wrong side without knowing it." Their father had remained silent, his weathered face unreadable as he processed everything he had heard. Now he finally spoke, addressing Kai directly. "You claim to have killed only those who threatened your people. What of the Harris family, the settlement at Crooks Creek?" "I was 100 miles away when the Harris family died," Kai replied evenly. "As for Crooks Creek, those were not Apache who attacked, but men dressed as Apache, led by a man with business interests in the silver mines nearby. Land that became available for mining claims after the settlement was abandoned." Robert Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "You can prove this?" "There is a trader at Fort Whipple," Kai said. "John Sweeney. He saw the false Apache leaving the settlement, recognized one as a foreman from the mining company. He will speak the truth if asked directly." Emma could see her father wavering, decades of certainty crumbling before new information that challenged everything he had believed. "Even if what you say is true," Thomas interjected, "it changes nothing. Emma belongs with her family, not living among... here. Why not both?" The suggestion came from William, surprising everyone. "If Kai saved Emma, if what they say about Parker is true, then perhaps there's another way forward, one that doesn't require anyone to choose between family and whatever has grown between them." Emma looked at her youngest brother with newfound respect. "What are you suggesting, Will?" William glanced at their father, then back to Emma and Kai. "A truce, an alliance even. If Parker and others have been playing both sides against each other for profit, wouldn't working together be the best revenge? Imagine what Father's tracking skills combined with Kai's knowledge could accomplish." The idea was so unexpected, so radical, that it rendered everyone temporarily speechless. Emma felt Kai's hand tighten briefly around hers, not in rejection of the idea, but in surprise. "An alliance," her father repeated slowly, testing the concept. "With the man I've hunted for years." "With the man who saved your daughter," William corrected gently. "The man she clearly cares for." Robert Caldwell's gaze shifted to Emma, truly seeing her perhaps for the first time in years, not as his little girl, but as a woman who had made her choice with clear eyes and a resolute heart. "You really believe in him," he said, a statement rather than a question. "With everything I am," Emma replied simply. Her father took a deep breath, looking older suddenly, the weight of years and mistaken beliefs heavy on his shoulders. He turned to Kai, studying the Apache warrior with new eyes. If we were to consider such an alliance, he said cautiously, what would it mean? What would it look like? Kai considered the question thoughtfully before answering. It would mean sharing knowledge, your skills in tracking combined with our understanding of the territory. It would mean standing together against those who profit from conflict between our peoples. It would mean respect, even if not always agreement. And Emma? Thomas demanded. Where does she fit in this alliance? Emma stepped forward. I make my own choices, Thomas. I choose to bridge both worlds, to be your sister still, and also, she glanced at Kai, a wealth of feeling in her eyes, and also to be with the man I've come to love. The declaration hung in the air, honest and unashamed. Emma had not planned to speak so openly of her feelings, but in this moment of truth between her past and her future, only complete honesty would suffice. Her father's expressions softened slightly. Love, he repeated, after so short a time. Sometimes, William interjected, the heart knows quickly what the mind takes time to accept. Robert Caldwell looked from his daughter to Kai and back again, then to the silent Apache warriors still positioned in the shadows, and finally to his sons. A lifetime of beliefs and prejudices weighed against the evidence before him and the happiness of his only daughter. I need to see for myself, he finally said. This community you speak of, these people who have taken you in, I need to understand before I can accept. It was more than Emma had dared hope for. You'll come to the valley, peacefully? Her father nodded slowly. Myself and William. James and Thomas can return with the others. Tell them the hunt is called off for now. James started to protest but was silenced by a look from his father. Thomas merely shook his head in disbelief, but neither openly contradicted their father's decision. The rest of your men must go, Kai stipulated. The valley remains hidden, protected. Agreed, Robert Caldwell said, then addressed the hired guns. You men head back to town. James, Thomas, go with them. Tell anyone who asks that we're pursuing a new lead. As the men reluctantly departed, led by her two older brothers, Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. The threat of immediate violence had passed, replaced by a fragile possibility of understanding. It was a small victory, but a significant one. Kai spoke quietly in Apache to Nijoni and the hidden warriors, and gradually they emerged from the shadows, still watchful, but no longer poised for combat. Nijoni approached Emma's father with dignified grace. You are welcome to our fire, she said in her halting English, to see how your daughter has lived among us. The simple gesture of hospitality seemed to affect Robert Caldwell more deeply than any argument could have. He nodded respectfully to the elderly woman. Thank you, Mum. As they prepared to continue to the valley, William fell in step beside Emma. I always knew you were the bravest of us, he said quietly, even as a child. Emma smiled at her brother. I'm not brave, Will. Just stubborn. Like father, he replied with a small grin, then grew serious again. He'll come around, Emma. He loves you too much not to try. And you? Emma asked. What do you think of all this? William glanced ahead to where Kai walked beside their father, the two men maintaining a respectful distance but no longer enemies. I think love is too rare in this world to reject it when it appears, no matter where we find it. His words warmed Emma's heart. At least one member of her family understood. It was a beginning. The next week passed in a state of cautious optimism. Emma's father and William remained in the valley, observing daily life, slowly shedding preconceptions as they witnessed the reality of Apache culture. Robert Caldwell, to Emma's surprise, showed genuine interest in learning about traditional hunting and survival techniques, his professional respect for skill transcending cultural boundaries. William adapted even more readily, eagerly absorbing knowledge about Apache medicine, tracking methods, and history. He spent long hours with the tribe's storyteller, recording tales and traditions that would otherwise be lost to time. Most significantly, Emma watched as her father and Kai gradually moved from wary respect to genuine conversation. The two men were more alike than either would have admitted, both proud, principled, and protective of those they loved, both shaped by loss and hardship into men of uncommon resilience. On the seventh night, as they sat around the central fire sharing an evening meal, Robert Caldwell finally addressed the future directly. I've been thinking about what you proposed, he said, looking at Kai across the flames. An alliance against those who profit from conflict, Parker isn't the only one. There are others, ranchers, miners, even some in the territorial government, who benefit from keeping the peace just out of reach. What are you suggesting, Father? Emma asked, sensing a shift in his thinking. I'm suggesting we put this alliance to the test, Robert replied. Parker needs to be exposed, brought to justice for his dealings. If we can prove what he's been doing, trading in stolen cattle and... He hesitated, the full horror of trafficking children still difficult for him to articulate. Other crimes, it would send a message, show that the Apache and honest settlers can stand together against true criminals. Kai considered this proposal, his expression thoughtful. It would be dangerous. Parker has powerful friends. All the more reason to act, Robert insisted. William has been making inquiries in town carefully. Parker is planning another transaction soon, a large one. How would we do this? Emma asked, looking between her father and Kai. The word of an Apache and a bounty hunter's family won't carry much weight against someone like Parker. Not alone, her father agreed, but with evidence, witnesses, and the right authorities present at the right time. He leaned forward, warming to his plan. There's a new Indian agent at Fort Whipple. Man named Harrison. By all accounts, he's honest, takes his job seriously. If he were to catch Parker in the act, with army witnesses... The conversation continued late into the night, the plan taking shape as they spoke. Emma watched in amazement as her father and Kai worked together, each contributing their unique knowledge and skills to create a strategy that might actually succeed. When they finally retired to their respective dwellings, Emma found herself walking beside Kai in the moonlight, her heart full of cautious hope. I never thought I'd see this day, she admitted softly. My father and you planning together instead of hunting each other. Kai took her hand as they walked, his touch now familiar and essential to her. Your father is a man of honor, beneath his prejudices, as you always believed. And what about us? Emma asked, stopping to face him directly. In all this planning for justice, where do we fit? Kai reached up to touch her face gently, his dark eyes reflecting the starlight. We walk between worlds, Emma Caldwell. Neither fully of mine nor fully of yours, but creating something new together. His voice softened. If that is still what you want. Emma leaned into his touch, the answer clear in her heart. It's all I want, Kai. A future with you, bridging both our worlds. His kiss was tender, a promise sealed beneath the vast Arizona sky. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would be many, they would face them together. Two souls who had found each other across boundaries of culture and history, prejudice and pain. The operation against Joshua Parker unfolded over the following weeks with precision that reflected the unlikely but effective partnership between Robert Caldwell and Kai. William traveled between the valley and various settlements, gathering information and establishing connections with potential allies, including the trader John Sweeney, who confirmed Kai's account of the false Apache attack on Crooks Creek. James and Thomas, initially skeptical of their father's change of heart, grudgingly joined the effort after seeing evidence of Parker's crimes with their own eyes. Their skills as trackers proved invaluable as they documented the movement of stolen cattle and identified the remote locations where exchanges took place. Emma divided her time between the valley, where she continued to deepen her bonds with the Apache community, and accompanying her father and brothers on reconnaissance missions where her presence wouldn't raise suspicion. Throughout it all, her relationship with Kai grew stronger, their shared purpose reinforcing the deep connection that had formed between them. The final phase of the plan was set in motion when William confirmed that Parker was planning his largest transaction yet, a major exchange of stolen cattle for weapons and other goods with his Mexican partners, scheduled to take place at an abandoned mining camp near the border. Indian agent Harrison, convinced by the evidence the Caldwells had gathered and impressed by Kai's dignified manner when they met secretly at Fort Whipple, agreed to bring a detachment of trusted soldiers to witness the exchange and make arrests. It was a risky strategy. If Parker suspected a trap, or if any of the soldiers proved sympathetic to his operations, the consequences could be deadly. The night before they were to put their plan into action, Emma found herself unable to sleep. She slipped out of Najoni's dwelling and made her way to the edge of the valley, where a natural outcropping provided a view of the star-filled sky. To her surprise, she found Kai already there, his solitary figure silhouetted against the night. "Couldn't sleep either," she asked softly, joining him on the flat stone where he sat. "I was thinking of tomorrow," he admitted. "Of all that may change." Emma understood his concern. If they succeeded, it would mark a new chapter, not just for them personally, but potentially for relations between settlers and Apache in the territory. If they failed, the consequences would fall most heavily on Kai and his people. "Are you worried?" she asked. "Cautious," he replied, his gaze still on the distant horizon. "Your father has surprised me with his willingness to see truth, to change, but others may not be so willing." Emma leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. That won't change." Kai turned to her then, something vulnerable in his expression that he rarely allowed others to see. "When I lost my wife and son, I thought that part of my life was over forever. I became the shadow of death, they named me, existing only for justice, for survival." His hand found hers in the darkness. "You brought me back to life, Emma Caldwell. You made me remember what it is to hope." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, his words touching something deep within her. "And you showed me what it means to be truly free, to live by one's own truth, not by others' expectations." Under the vast Arizona sky, they held each other, two souls who had found in each other the healing they both needed. Whatever tomorrow brought, this moment, this connection, was real and enduring. The abandoned mining camp lay baking under the midday sun, its weathered structures creating long shadows across the dusty ground. From their hidden position in the surrounding hills, Emma, Kai, and her father observed as Joshua Parker and his men arrived, driving a herd of cattle bearing a variety of brands, none of them Parker's own. "At least 30 head, Robert Caldwell murmured, lowering his field glasses. "Stolen from at least 4 different ranches by my count." "The Mexicans approach from the south," Kai noted, his keen eyes picking out the dust cloud that signaled their arrival. 6 riders, heavily armed. Emma scanned the perimeter of the camp, confirming the positions of William and Thomas, hidden among the rocks to the east, and James, who was stationed with Agent Harrison and the soldiers in a dry creek bed to the west. Everything was in place, yet tension knotted in her stomach. So much could go wrong. "Remember," her father said quietly, "we wait until the transaction is clearly underway. Harrison needs to see money and goods change hands to make the charges stick." As they watched, the Mexican traders arrived, greeted Parker with wary familiarity. Negotiations began, with Parker proudly displaying the cattle, while the leader of the Mexican group opened saddlebags containing payment, American dollars, weapons, and something that made Emma's blood run cold, small items of clothing and personal effects, clearly belonging to children. "Evidence of their other trade," her father said grimly, his jaw tightening. "Harrison will have all he needs." The signal, a flash of reflected sunlight from James's position, came moments later. The trap was ready to be sprung. Her father nodded to Kai, who slipped away to circle behind the camp, cutting off any escape to the south. "Be careful," Emma whispered after him, though he was already gone, moving through the landscape like the shadow he was named for. Her father squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "He knows what he's doing, Emma. We all do." The next few minutes unfolded with breathtaking speed. At Harrison's command, soldiers emerged from their hiding places, rifles raised as they ordered Parker and the traders to surrender. For a moment, it seemed the operation would succeed without bloodshed, until one of Parker's men panicked, firing wildly at the approaching soldiers. Chaos erupted. The Mexican traders scattered, some firing back at the soldiers, others attempting to flee south, only to find Kai blocking their path. Parker himself dashed for his horse, clearly intent on escape rather than standing his ground. "He's getting away!" Emma cried, watching as Parker mounted and spurred his horse toward a gap in the surrounding forces. Her father was already moving, sliding down the rocky slope toward his own horse. Emma followed, determination overriding caution. They couldn't let Parker escape, not after everything they had risked to bring him to justice. As they mounted and gave chase, Emma caught glimpses of the melee behind them. Soldiers subduing several of Parker's men, William and Thomas cornering 2 of the Mexican traders, Kai in pursuit of others who had fled into the hills. But her focus remained on Parker, his horse kicking up dust as he raced toward the border. They pursued him through winding canyons and across open stretches of desert, the summer heat beating down mercilessly. Parker's horse was fast, but burdened by his weight, while Emma's willow was lighter and fresher. Gradually she began to close the gap, her father not far behind. When Parker realized he couldn't outrun them, he veered suddenly toward a jumble of massive boulders, apparently seeking a defensive position. Emma followed cautiously, aware that he was armed and desperate. "Stay back, Emma," her father called, catching up to her. "He'll shoot if cornered." But Emma had come too far to retreat now. Drawing the pistol she now carried habitually, she dismounted and moved carefully among the boulders, searching for any sign of Parker. The shot came without warning, a deafening crack that sent stone fragments flying inches from Emma's head. She ducked behind cover, heart racing as Parker's voice echoed among the rocks. "Should have known you'd turn out like this, Emma," he shouted, his tone bitter. "Always thought you were too good for me. Now look at you, the Apache's woman. Your poor mother would roll in her grave." "Surrender, Joshua," Emma called back, ignoring his taunts. "It's over. The army has your men, your cattle, evidence of your crimes. There's nowhere left to run." His laugh was ugly, desperate. "I'm not hanging for this, Emma. If I go down, I'm taking you with me." Another shot rang out closer this time. Emma crouched lower, trying to pinpoint his position among the maze of boulders. She could hear her father moving somewhere to her left, attempting to flank Parker's position. "You won't leave here alive, Parker," Robert Caldwell shouted. "Not after what you've done. Trading in stolen children. Even the devil wouldn't have you." "Spare me your righteous act, Caldwell," Parker spat back. "You hunted Apache for money. How many children lost their fathers to your bounties? We're not so different, you and I. Just that I was smart enough to get paid better." The exchange gave Emma the chance to slip closer, moving silently as Kai had taught her, placing each foot carefully to avoid dislodging stones that might give away her position. She could now see Parker, crouched behind a large boulder, his attention focused on where he believed her father to be approaching. Emma raised her pistol, steadying her aim. "Drop your weapon, Joshua," she commanded, her voice calm despite the hammering of her heart. Parker spun toward her, surprise quickly giving way to rage. For a fraction of a second, Emma saw indecision in his eyes. Then his arm began to rise, bringing his gun to bear. Emma didn't hesitate. The shot echoed off the canyon walls, followed by an eerie silence. Parker stared at her in disbelief, a crimson stain spreading across his chest. His pistol slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers as he slumped against the rock behind him. "You," he gasped, his voice already fading. "Never thought you had it in you." Then he was still, his eyes fixed on the merciless blue sky above. Emma lowered her pistol slowly, an odd calm settling over her. She had taken a life, something she had never imagined herself capable of doing. Yet faced with the choice between Parker's life and the future she and Kai were fighting for, the decision had been clear. Her father appeared beside her, gently taking the pistol from her hand. "You did what you had to do," he said quietly. "He gave you no choice." Emma nodded, unable to speak for a moment. Finally she managed, "The others? What happened?" "Most were captured," her father reported. "A few of the Mexicans escaped south, but Harrison has Parker's men and enough evidence to ensure they face justice." He studied her face with concern. "Are you all right?" "I will be," Emma replied, drawing a deep breath. "Let's go find Kai." The aftermath of what came to be known locally as the Parker affair rippled through the Arizona territory in unexpected ways. Joshua Parker's criminal network was exposed, revealing corruption that reached into the territorial government itself. Several officials resigned in disgrace, others faced criminal charges. More significantly for Emma and Kai, the operation created a precedent for cooperation between settlers and Apache that challenged long-held prejudices on both sides. Indian Agent Harrison, true to his word, documented the events in his official reports, emphasizing how the combined knowledge and skills of the Caldwells and Kai had made justice possible where official channels alone might have failed. For the small Apache community in the Hidden Valley, the changes came gradually. While they remained justifiably cautious about contact with the outside world, the alliance with the Caldwell family provided a buffer of protection and a channel for trade that improved their circumstances considerably. Robert Caldwell, whose reputation as a bounty hunter had once made him feared throughout Apache territory, now used his connections to advocate for fair treatment and respect for traditional lands. James and Thomas required more time to adjust to their family's new reality, but the evidence of Parker's crimes, particularly his involvement in child trafficking, had shaken their worldview sufficiently that they were at least willing to reconsider other beliefs. Thomas eventually returned to their rebuilt ranch, maintaining the family's cattle business with a new policy of fair employment that included several young Apache men eager to learn ranching skills. William, however, embraced the new direction wholeheartedly. His natural curiosity and openness made him an ideal bridge between cultures. He began documenting Apache language, stories, and medicinal knowledge, working closely with Nijoni to preserve traditions that might otherwise be lost to time. When he eventually took a position as assistant to Agent Harrison at Fort Whipple, he brought with him a perspective informed by genuine understanding rather than prejudice. As for Emma and Kai, their path forward unfolded with both challenges and joys. They were married twice, once in the Apache tradition, with Nijoni presiding over the ceremony in the Hidden Valley, and later in a simple civil ceremony at Fort Whipple, with Agent Harrison officiating and the Caldwell family in attendance. They made their home primarily in the valley, where Emma continued to deepen her knowledge of Apache medicine, combining it with her mother's teachings to become a healer whose skills were sought by both settlers and native communities. Kai, no longer hunted, used his unparalleled knowledge of the territory to guide official survey parties, ensuring that sacred Apache sites were properly identified and protected in territorial records. Together, they built a life that existed in the space between worlds, not fully of either culture, but creating something new that honored both. It was not always easy. Prejudice remained a constant challenge, and there were times when the weight of history threatened to overwhelm their personal happiness. But they faced each obstacle together, their bond strengthened by all they had overcome to find each other. On a warm evening 1 year after the Parker affair, Emma stood once again on the high outcropping overlooking the valley, watching as the setting sun painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Kai joined her, slipping his arm around her waist as they gazed out over the landscape that had shaped them both. "Your father arrives tomorrow," he reminded her, his voice warm with genuine affection for the man who had once been his most determined hunter. Emma nodded, leaning into his embrace. "He's bringing news from William. Apparently the territorial governor is considering a new policy for Apache lands, something about protected areas where traditional life can continue without interference. It will not solve everything," Kai observed realistically, "but it is a beginning." "A beginning is all we ever needed," Emma replied, turning to face him fully. "Everything else we build together day by day." As the last light faded from the sky, stars emerging in the vast darkness above, Emma Caldwell, once the daughter of a bounty hunter, now the wife of the man he had hunted, and always her own person above all else, felt a profound sense of gratitude for the path that had led her here, not to an ending but to a new beginning. In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, its voice echoing across the canyon. Beside her, Kai smiled, the expression no longer rare on his face, and together they descended to the valley below, where fires glowed warm against the gathering night, and the future, with all its possibilities, awaited them. The end. Dear listener, as the last embers of our campfire story fade into the night, I'm reminded of something my grandmother once told me while we sat on her porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. The most beautiful sunsets come after the stormiest days. Emma and Kai's journey through the rugged Arizona territory isn't just a tale from a distant time. It's a mirror, reflecting our own weathered hearts. How many of us have built walls around ourselves, only to discover later that those very barriers kept out not just pain but also unexpected joy? I wonder, when was the last time you surprised yourself? When did you last defy the expectations others had of you? Or perhaps more importantly, the ones you had for yourself? At 60, 70, or beyond, we've earned our calluses and crow's feet. We've weathered disappointments and buried dreams alongside those we've loved. Yet here we are, still standing, still breathing, still capable of growth. Emma's father reminds us that it's never too late to question what we've believed all our lives, to humble ourselves before a new truth. Tonight, as the weight of your body sinks into your mattress, let your spirit float free like a feather on the desert wind. Feel the protective embrace of the universe that has carried you through every storm. Release the judgments of others and yourself that no longer serve you. The lines on your face tell stories of resilience, not defeat. Perhaps tomorrow you might look at someone you've misunderstood with fresh eyes, or maybe you'll simply be gentler with yourself, honoring your journey with all its detours and discoveries. The frontier isn't just something that existed long ago, it's the threshold of possibility that awaits us each morning when we open our eyes. Rest deeply, brave traveler. Like Emma and Kai finding sanctuary in their hidden valley, may you find sacred refuge in your dreams tonight. With all our gratitude, Wild West Whispers team. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this story. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to our channel, leaving a like, writing a comment, and sharing with someone who needs a story like this today. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for supporting our work. Your love and encouragement give us the strength to keep telling stories full of meaning, emotion, and unexpected turns. At the end of this video, you'll find another suggested story from our channel. Click on it and be amazed by another unforgettable tale of the Wild West, love, and second chances.